Welcome back to another live session, questions and answers about all your piercing questions and concerns. Now, my name is Scott Wilkinson. I'm a professional body piercer. I have been piercing since 1994. And over here, we also have Jared asking all your questions for you. How are we doing, Jared?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good this morning. We're going to read through the questions. We already have some people waiting with some cool questions. And we're
Awesome.
just going to interact with all the folks out here.
That's
I love it.
fantastic.
Super cool.
Remember, people, before we get started here, when you're sending questions, make sure you ask a very, very thorough question. If it's just like, why is my bump here, that I can't answer that, you have to say, I have a bump on my nose. It's been here for this long, and I think it happened because of this, and this is what I'm doing. If you ask a thorough question, I'll get you a better answer. And I do want to apologize for not making it last week to a live chat. Normally we do every other week, but I ended up going out of town to go to Denver to visit my friend Tom and Jackie. And Tom actually did some tattoos for me. He actually redid the white dots down my nose, and I had some old brandings under here, but you couldn't see them, so we did some white outlines around there again. So yeah, we had some good times, good seeing old friends. So, but anyways, I think we should probably get started with some questions here, being they're starting to
amass a little bit.
Yes,
all right. Sounds good. So first up, we have a question from Emily Sakuma, and she says, hi, Scott. Is it normal for my Christina to still feel sore sometimes after a month or a month out from the piercing?
Okay. Sometimes it does. It really kind of depends on several factors. Number one, it is still in the healing process, so it can be a little bit tender and sore, but I make sure that the beads or the gems aren't getting sucked in. If the jewelry's too tight and the jewelry's getting pulled in, that could be an issue and why it might be a little bit sore. And the other thing is just like lifestyle. Are you taking care of this properly? Are you real active where it might be getting bumped or hit, or the clothes rubbing up against it? There's a lot of factors, but it still can be a little bit sore. Just my only concern would be is if the beads are getting sucked in, then you need a longer bar.
Now, when you say sucked in, do they have to be like getting all the way pulled into your body, or do you just mean like if the beads are in contact? Like how much is too much?
If you have a round bead, you should pretty much see most of that bead. The bead might come up flush to the skin like so. But if you have only half of a bead showing and the bead is starting to embed into the skin,
okay,
that starts to be a problem.
So if it's smushing into you,
a little dimple's not a big deal. But yeah, if the bead is going inside, that's an issue. You should see the full bead.
Super cool.
Thanks, Jared.
All right. Will Jones asks, is it possible that your cartilage just dislikes being pierced? Like you're not sleeping on it, or you don't have an allergy? Maybe you're just not, made for it?
I think you might be onto something. I kind of agree. There's really stubborn cartilage that just takes forever to heal. If they sometimes ever do, it can be frustrating, but generally there's a source of the problem, whether it is sleeping on it or your hair product, the type of soap. I don't know. But they do take a long, long time to heal. And it could be that you just might not be, I don't know about by saying healthy enough, but you might not have the right nutrients to heal it up properly. So maybe think about taking multivitamins to kind of fill in all those gaps to make sure that you have what you need to heal it too.
Just lifestyle. Maybe you're a rough sleeper. You know what I mean? Maybe you're always grinding your ear into the pillow.
You don't sleep on it. You don't think you do, but I really can't remember every toss and turn I've ever done in my sleep. So
it's possible. I don't know. It's happening there too.
But some people just do take longer to heal.
All right. Next up, we have a question from Foggy. Foggy seems pretty new to piercing, so we're going to be able to give some good information here. Wants to know, how much different is it getting a piercing through the top part of the ear where it folds instead of the flat underneath it? And is it just called a helix, or are there other names for those? So this basically, I think by the flat part, he means the lobe. So
no, I think the flat area he's talking about the flat, or he or she, I'm sorry, in the middle of the ear, because the flat piercing is in the middle of the cartilage compared to the helix. It's this, if that's what you're saying, they're both helix piercings in essence. They're going to heal about the same way. The only thing is, if you're getting the flat of your cartilage pierced, you can't really wear a ring or a hoop in the future unless it's a ginormous ring. Now, if you're talking about earlobe compared to cartilage, that's a whole world of difference. Like the earlobe is going to be healed up in generally 6 to 8 weeks. And it seems and feels healed way before that. But cartilage takes anywhere from like 4 months all the way up to, on average, about a year to heal. It's a huge window, but everyone heals differently, as you just heard for the last person that typed in there. So.
And if you check out our series, The Whole Truth, it actually goes through every individual piercing with a pain level, common problems, things like that. So, Foggy, if there's specific piercings you want to compare, like a helix to a flat, there's videos for both of those that you can check out.
But in essence, they are pretty much the same thing. Technically, the flat, I think, is the anti-helix, but it's cartilage piercing.
All right. Next up, Brittany Frank says, hello from Minnesota.
My home state. Hello, Brittany.
Jealous says, hey, Scott. And Violet also says, hi, guys. Hope you're having a good day.
Hope you're having a wonderful one, too.
N-MMII wants to know if you plan on getting any new piercings.
Yes, I would love to get some new piercings. I've wanted to get my mantises pierced. I definitely need more nose piercings. I also really want to get the back of my neck pierced, the nape piercing. I'm sure there's gonna be more in the future, but right now that's what I really, really want. I also want to get coin slots in the side of my helixes, but that's not quite a piercing. That's more of a body mod.
Very cool. Hello to Aaron. Glad you're here watching.
Hey, Aaron.
Peter A says, hey, Scott, I got my navel piercing, which I got a year ago, and it keeps getting irritation bumps. The jewelry is titanium, and it is the correct length, and I wash with Neilmed. Help. So what else could be going on?
Okay. Chances are your pants or your clothes are rubbing up against it. It's being irritated by something like that. Generally, the lower rise pants you have, the easier this is going to be to heal. Back in the 90s, when low-rise pants were really low, people were healing these up in 3 to 4 months. But as soon as the pant line came back up, I noticed that they take sometimes over a year to heal. And that's just constant irritation, hence the bump you probably have. So find lower-rise pants, different pants, something that doesn't rub directly up against it.
That's actually really interesting. It's something fun about the fact that you've been doing this for over 20 years is that you get like direct science from that. Like, you know, when trends have pants high, these take much longer to heal. When trends have pants low, it's fast.
So obvious. It's like, man, this is great. Everyone's just coming in with perfectly healed piercings. Those bumps just stopped overnight, you know, and then the high-rise pants came back in style, and I was just like, no.
it just means problems for your customers. That's funny. Ursula's Odds and Sods says, I know you shouldn't wear silicone, wood, stone, or any flatback plugs in a fresh stretch, but how long is a stretch considered fresh?
That's a fantastic question. It's really different from person to person. It kind of depends on how tight your jewelry is. Now, if you stretch your ears, say from a 0 to a 00, and after a couple days, your jewelry just kind of spins and it's feeling free and it doesn't hurt at all, you might be able to do some sort of silicone or wood or something like that. But if the jewelry's really tight and you put some sort of wood or organic, it almost adheres, sticks to it, and that's when you get micro tears and other problems like that. So if it's moving freely after a couple days and it was a really easy stretch, you're probably okay. It's never really an open wound. It's just really, really tight.
Interesting. So basically just when you feel like it's loosened up a little is kind of the personal line.
Now, if you've stretched and it bled, you made an open wound, then that's another whole story. But if it's a proper stretch and it's loose, you're fine. Good.
Very cool. Yep. Great question, Ursula. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I've never been asked that one before. That's a good one.
Will Jones says, hi, Scott. I'm 16 and I'm going for work experience at a piercing shop. So not performing any piercings, probably just like, you know, cleaning tasks and things like that. Do you think this will make my apprenticeship much quicker?
Normally that's kind of part of the apprenticeship. So it's kind of hard to answer that because if you're not getting the apprenticeship at that shop, it's not going to really do you any good. But that's
unless you're building goodwill at that shop. You know what I mean? Maybe you're there, you're young still, but you do such a good job. They know that you're the hard worker. You always go the extra mile. You always do the extra stuff. Maybe they're going to look at you for an apprenticeship.
I would suggest possibly bringing it up sooner than later. Then if that's the case, instead of working there for a couple of years and then saying, hey, do you guys do apprenticeships? And they're like, no, we're never going to do one, or we're not, I'm done doing them, or whatever it might be. So make sure that they know that you're interested in that as well. Otherwise, working for counter help, it also kind of depends. There's good shops and there's bad shops. If you got a whole bunch of information from a bad shop and then you want to go to a good shop and say, hey, I worked over here, I have all this knowledge. Right. It's not the right knowledge. So make sure you're at the right place. Now, the right situation for you.
That was a question I had. So maybe like if you're just hanging around a shop every day, so if you're working there, whether it's front desk or whatever it is you're doing, like what could you try to pay attention to and pick up that would be useful to you, like jewelry sizes, like common sizes?
Just
that things
understanding
are?
all the piercings, how they're supposed to look. I mean, you're going to see little issues, people coming in with bumps and knowing what some of the remedies could possibly be. I mean, you're not a piercer, so you can't really diagnose a lot of those things, but you can get a general good base knowledge and a good head start, so you're not completely blindsided when you start your apprenticeship.
That's a good point, because some people I think you told me about who like think they want to be a piercer and then they don't actually know what that means. They don't actually know like what the customers are like and what they're really going to be doing every day.
Yep, seeing exactly what's going on. So a lot of people start apprenticeships that way, with working front counter and the front help, and you really understand a lot of things, and it's a good head start. But just working there doesn't guarantee an apprenticeship.
All right, so hopefully that works out for you. At the very least, it should be it's a more useful type of experience than if you work fast food.
It's a fun job. It's a fun industry to be in.
Absolutely.
It is.
So hopefully that is a good step, and just learn as much as you can, and hopefully that works out for you. Will.
Absolutely.
Christina says, "Hey, Scott."
Hi, Christina.
Ellen wants to know when the next "What Should I Get Pierced" video is coming. Actually, we're filming that today.
Yes, we are. We'll be. Are we putting that out this week?
Probably coming out this week or next week soon.
Yep. Really, really soon.
All right. Hi, guys, from Kate Taylor. Hi, Kate. Glad you're here.
Hello.
Plugsley X says, "Hey, Scott, I just finished my apprenticeship and I'm struggling to get people in the door. Do you have any advice?"
It's always a really, really tough start. I've been piercing a long time, and when I opened my studio, I had moved here from Minnesota, and I didn't really have a reputation out here, so not a lot of people knew who I was. So the first year of me even having a business, I was barely getting by. I was basically living off tips and just trying to put things back in, doing 1 or 2 piercings a day. So it always starts off really, really slow, but get good about social media. Don't pollute it, but get good pictures of when you do. Tell people to leave a review if you had a good experience or whatever, not just a good experience, but hey, if make sure you leave me a review. Right. Yeah. So,
I feel like Yelp has been a big part of your success.
It can be a nightmare too. So make sure your customer service is spot on.
Absolutely.
That's really important. Really important. So it's just be patient. You will get there. None of us start off running.
Right. Yep. And an interesting thing, I mean, you clearly already have your place, like you have a door that you want to keep open.
Yes.
But a better start, I think, sometimes is to work for someone else, gain a reputation, gain a client base who might follow you.
For sure.
To your new place.
For sure. It's just, you're going to have to pierce for a while, and pretty soon people will like your style. People like you, and they have their piercer. And that's what happens. It's like, I'm sure you probably had your piercer, and that's what influenced you. So eventually, you just need new clients. I get a lot of repeats, and I get a lot of new ones from referrals, and that's just how it works. So the more people you pierce, the more referrals you get, and it just builds up and up and up until you eventually get to full-time piercing.
So keep your chin up, Plugsley. It'll work for you.
Yep.
All right. Ursula's Odds and Sods says, "I'm also happy to announce that my right ear is now at a 0 gauge and my left is at a 4. I plan to keep my right at a 0 until my left catches up. The current goal size is 14 millimeters."
It's always such a fun journey trying to get up to where you need to go. Sometimes it's really frustrating, but if you're patient and you get there, it's so rewarding. And that's why, for the people who don't have stretched ears, that's where our love comes from. I think it's kind of the journey trying to get there. Like, I don't understand why, like, sometimes the jewelry looks cool, but there's more to it than just the jewelry. We love our stretch plugs.
That's interesting. That's a cool insight, that it's about what it took to get there.
Yeah. It's not just like you just put them in. It takes a while. And like, there's some pride involved with those stretch lobes. And most people they are proud of their stretch lobes.
Right. You earned it in a sense with your patience.
Absolutely.
By doing it correctly.
Yeah.
Very cool. M. Crawford says, "Hey, Scott and Jared, I currently wear corkscrews in my nostrils, and I sometimes find that they fall out in my sleep. The same with the L-shaped studs. What can I do?"
First of all, you can have them rebent or readjusted. If you go to a good studio, or basically, hopefully your jewelry was bent to fit you and not just a pre-bent one. Sometimes the pre-bent ones break when you do that. But I generally get mine straight, and I custom bend it to fit your nose. If it's a one size fits all, it's going to be loose, it's going to fall out, and you're going to have problems. Now, if you can't get the one adjusted or a custom bent one for your nose, I would go with a threadless piece of jewelry. Now, a threadless piece of jewelry is just a little tiny disc on the inside in the post, and then you have a lot of different gem tops you can put on the top there. Sometimes you can change them yourself. A lot of times you have to go in and have a piercer help you out. But that's a good option where it won't fall out for you.
So if there's one style of jewelry that you're just going to basically wear the same gem all the time, then that threadless top makes sense because you don't need to change it.
Or if you're changing it out every so many months or something, I want a new top, and then we can help you out. But if you're changing it out all the time, that's really tough to,
You don't want something that you need help for every time.
Correct.
All right. So hopefully that's helpful, Em. Cassie Clayton says, hi, it's Kat from Indiana again. Much love. Great to see you, Kathy. Lost my space. I'll find it. Stinking auto scroll. All right. And we are back. Will Jones says, tip for anyone who's a rough sleeper. What I did was get a travel pillow and I just held it on with a belt around my head. I like it. Send us a picture if possible.
Send us a picture. So you put the belt around your head
because otherwise the pillow's going to slip and move around. You're going to end up on the not in the hole.
Like a giant headband, but you can't find it. So belt. That's good thinking. I mean, at first I giggled, but it makes more sense the more you think about it.
I like it.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Just Drift 96 says, congrats on 90,000 subs. Nearly got that 100K plaque for the studio. Any nice cigars recently, Scott? I remember Jared says he's into tech like Blender. I'm into software dev tool and thought that was software dev also and thought that was cool. Very cool.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for subscribing. And if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe so we can get to 100,000 and hang that plaque somewhere around here. I'm so excited and I can't believe how awesome of a crowd we have here.
That's very cool.
Everyone is so great, so nice, so helpful and fun. So we love you all. Thank you very much.
Very cool, Just Drift. And yes, it's super cool that you're a software dev. I don't even dare call myself a software dev. I can kludge around in Python a bit and once in a while and see.
But back to the cigars. Yeah, I've been smoking more cigars lately because it's fall time, so we can walk around and smoke. And I like a variety, so every night's gonna be something different. That's why my humidor is full of just a bunch of different types of cigars. And I like a medium to full cigar.
All right.
Yeah.
Little details about the man there, a little behind the
scenes.
Yuri1217 says, are the heart-shaped dots good for an initial earring piercing? By the way, I love your piercing explanation vids.
Thank you. The heart-shaped dots?
Like a doth piercing, like the ring that they have for dots that are it looks like a heart.
Okay. So I personally don't use them because with the heart, you have the part where it kind of hooks on the top. A lot of times those are so curved in that the curve is stronger than the depth of the piercing, which means it's a real hard transfer and it can really hurt and irritate getting it in. If that is the case and you're having issues, you need to get it out. It's going to be even worse to get it out. So I personally don't like to start with those until you're healed up and the swelling's gone down. But I have done it in the past. I have opened them up a little bit so it's easier to get in and out. And the way they're shaped, the gap can't really go into the middle of the piercing, so it won't close in on itself. That's one of the few exceptions for a seamless style ring that I will actually pierce with. But in general, I don't until you're healed up.
Just because it can be too tough to get that tight curve through.
Because if you get too much swelling, you need to get it out and you're pulling that real tight curve through there and it already hurts. It's like, I don't like hurting people more than I have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the reason why.
Pedro Perez says, I just got my tragus pierced and your videos made me much more relaxed at my meeting.
Well, congratulations on your tragus piercing. I hope the videos really help for you because that's their real purpose. And yeah, if you guys are interested in any other types of videos or questions, let me know and I'll definitely try to get something recorded up for you because it's so fun doing all these things and trying to come up with the big questions. Sometimes they'll take your questions here and it's like, that's a great idea for a video. And,
right. That's a question. If one person has that question, then there are other people who have that same question.
So yeah. And you're not alone. We all have piercing issues. That's why we're here right today.
All right. Brandon Austin says, hey, Scott, I had my lobe reconstruction on both ears about 2 months ago. And the doctor said I should be okay to re-pierce right about now, but I can still feel scar tissue in there. How will this affect piercing and stretching?
You plan on stretching again? See, the pride in the stretched ear doesn't go away. Okay, basically what he's saying is he had stretched ears before, I'm guessing stretched ears, and the plastic surgeon did the plastic surgery, made his earlobes look normal again, and he's saying that it takes 2 months before you re-pierce them. Personally, I don't think that's long enough. Some of these scar tissue things can take a lot longer. If you want to pierce your ears again and have them stretched, you need your earlobes to feel as normal as possible. Now, a lot of times they take the earlobe and it kind of coils back up. So you're going to feel weird things of scar tissue. You need to massage it. And once that's completely broken down and your earlobe feels as close to normal as possible, that's when I would do the piercing. The doctor's right. You probably can pierce it at 2 months, but if you want to stretch it, I would get that tissue as close to normal as possible, because once it's pierced, it's real tough to get rid of that scar tissue.
All right. Some nice specific advice for you there. So hopefully that helps for you, Brandon. Psycho Dude says, hey guys, when doing a large gauge cartilage piercing, would you use a needle or a dermal punch? And if using a punch, do you stretch to the next size up to stop the bleeding?
Okay, so here in Nevada, it's technically illegal to use biopsy punches or dermal punches. So I only use needles. And for cartilage piercings, I generally don't go up too big initially, just because the piercing needle, you can't displace that cartilage off to the side. I had my nostrils pierced originally at an 8 and the other one at a 6, and it was one of the worst things I've ever done to myself. But anyways, as far as...
And other people pierced them, just to clarify. By done to yourself, you mean you made the decision to go get it done, not that you did it to yourself.
I'm not that crazy. Yeah. So, and then as far as the biopsy punches, when I was in areas where it was legal, when I did those, I did punch and then stretch one size to minimize the bleeding. I do have a video, the story of my first biopsy punch, that you should check out, because it's pretty intense. Because I think there was like 5 or 6 veins we went through. There was no stretch afterwards, and it was an issue.
So a stretch afterwards would have made that less of a bad story.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. Spoiler alert, I did go to the hospital. Yeah.
So yeah, that's your stretch up a size. If you're gonna use
that puts that pressure
punch
on there. That's why piercings don't bleed. It's a crescent incision and all that pressure pushing on the piercing. If you took the needle out, you're gonna bleed. But as long as you have that jewelry the same size, that stops the bleeding. If you do a biopsy punch and there's no initial stretch afterwards, there's no pressure on there, you're gonna bleed a lot.
Ellie Blundell asks, do you think you'd be able to make any videos on changing piercings? I have a few piercings and I'm worried about changing it because of it becoming infected or not being able to get it back in.
Sure. That's a great idea. Changing piercings. Yeah. I'll like home tools, maybe like how to do things properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll look into that for
around.
you. Yeah.
Good idea, Ellie.
We'll do maybe a changing series.
Yeah, because it is different
parts, and they're different for parts of the body. So yeah, let us know what you would like to see, like help with changing piercings. Like what would be a good series? Let us know.
All right.
Cool.
If you have a fresh conch piercing as healthy as possible, is it normal for it to be swollen for a month?
Yes. A lot of cartilage piercings stay swollen during the whole healing process. A lot of times they start slowly going down, but I have seen them swollen the whole time. So it can be a long time before that fistula or that tube of scar tissue can actually fully heal and everything relaxes. I do know for a fact that doth piercings stay swollen pretty much the whole healing process. And if you don't believe me, if you've had a doth piercing for 3 or 4 months, take a picture of both your ears and look at them. They're not going to be the same size.
Wow. So even if it feels good and it won't hurt,
good. It's like you're not healed yet. It's still swollen. It's still big. And then you took another picture, another 6 months in, and it's probably going to be close to the same size now. It's amazing. It's really
bigger than people expect.
Yeah.
Ashley Parker asks, dermals versus anti-eyebrows. I can't decide which one I want to do. So what are some pros and cons?
Okay. Generally, I'm not a huge fan of dermal anchors, but as far as the anti-eyebrow, I think I've seen 1 or 2 people in my lifetime heal those up. The anti-eyebrow is the area right underneath here. A lot of times it's horizontal this way. You can go perpendicular up and down this way. That's the way I had mine. But if you feel that skin, and it's right now there's hundreds of people touching their anti-eyebrow.
At least 63.
It's so soft. and like there's movement, they almost always reject out. Also, with these anti-eyebrows, you can get a huge black eyes from them for probably a week plus. Dermal anchors generally sit a little bit better and they last a little bit longer in my experience. So I would lean towards dermal anchors over
the anti-eyebrows.
I have seen people heal them, but odds aren't in your favor.
All right, Ashley. So weigh that
Good
in
question.
your decision and see how that makes you feel.
Yeah.
Not a gamer says, I've had my nipples pierced for 6 months. When can I get the shorter bars?
Probably any time now. You're going to have a little bit of crusties still on there, and sometimes those crusties last up to a couple years. But if it seems healed and they're comfortable, the shorter bars definitely make a huge difference. So go ahead and shorten them.
All right, time to go, Not a Gamer. That's exciting news. Violet says, my first piercing was a navel, and I was told to clean it with Q-tips. Now it's fully healed, and I'm now informed that cleaning it with Q-tips is not good. Should I just keep doing what has worked for me so far or not?
It's really not going to cause that much of an issue for you at this point. The reason we don't want you to clean with Q-tips anymore is a lot of times the cotton fibers can kind of stick to the jewelry. The crusties turns into a bacteria trap. Those cotton fibers get pulled inside. It can be an issue, and it's a minute issue, but it causes a lot of problems. Once you're fully healed and you have that tube of scar tissue through there, it's not going to cause an issue unless you're getting prong jewelry. If you have like teeth holding onto the gems on the top and bottom and you're cleaning, you're going to get cotton all over there, and no one wants a fuzzy gem.
You know, it's true. I take pictures for the place here, and you can clean something with a Q-tip and it looks fine to your naked eye, but then you get zoomed in and there's little white fibers stuck under each of the little hooks.
It builds up. So so I would suggest using paper towels on that, but it wouldn't cause any real harm.
All right. Alyssa J says, hi guys, glad to be here. We're glad you're here.
Yes.
Is it true that tools such as hemostats and openers and closers are used on mid-range to high-end jewelry that it damages the finish?
Yes, it totally can. Here at Piercing Vegas, I only use brass line tools, which has brass on there instead of the steel, which is softer than the titanium jewelry that we use. Now, the gold and the niobium are much softer, and I use a little notch jewelry if I need to use any sort of tool, but I really try to avoid it at all costs so it doesn't cause any damage to the jewelry. But yes, it absolutely can. And there are certain types of tools that cause far less damage or no damage if used properly.
Because they'd put something softer in the jaw
you
area.
Get like plastic lined, like brass lined hemostats are soft, and then they also have plastic ones.
So that'll deform instead
covers. Some people will use like finger cots, like those little things you put over your fingers, like the little cut to kind of over a Band-Aid to hold it in. You can put those over tools, and sometimes that's soft enough to kind of help things out. Some people use medical tape and wrap them on like larger gauge jewelry. So there's ways to go about it so you don't damage it, but you're absolutely right. You can damage the jewelry.
And sometimes that's the cause of an irritated piercing. That
100%.
Somebody clamped down hard, left some grooves, and then as it's sliding around in you, it's wrecking you.
See, this barely pierced guy here who's never done a piercing is like, catching on. You're catching on, Jared. You're absolutely right, though. That's the reason why we don't want to use externally threaded jewelry. But if you have internally threaded jewelry and you put a big crimp in there in the middle, that's just as damaging. So thanks, Jared. That was a great point.
All right. I'm just trying to help.
Yeah.
XLD Valley Song Flipper says, I just got my snake bites done, and now one has a flap over the disc. 2 weeks healing now.
Yep. I don't know why this is popping up so much recently, but I've had multiple phone calls on this as well. On the inside of your lip piercings, when you get some sort of a lip piercing, labret, some sort of a bite piercing, sometimes you get a little bit of a skin tag, a little bump, and it seems concerning, but a lot of times it's just a slight irritation bump, and a lot of times it goes away. Now, if you've had your piercing a month or longer, you might want to downsize to a shorter post, because the longer post could be causing that irritation. Even if you have that bump, I still think downsizing is the best option. A lot of times you say don't downsize if you have that bump, but the inside, I think it's the movement that causes that irritation.
Now, when they say flap over the disc, it almost sounds like more than just a bump. It almost sounds like a large chunk. Like, what if it's growing over? Is that a thing that ever happens? Like, if it's too tight?
It does. And okay, now also what's going on is your body is is kind of creating a pocket on the inside where that disc goes into your lip just a little tiny bit. And sometimes that's enough to cause that little flap or like almost skin taggish type thing. Now, if you have to pop it out like it's getting stuck in your lip, that means the jewelry's too tight and it's completely absorbing in there and you need a longer post. Yes, so you're right, Jared. There's a point where it's too far and it's going to be eating, but it also does want to create a little bit of a pocket, and that pocket is normal.
So a little bit of inside is fine.
Yeah.
So with Balisong Flipper here, with these 2-week-old, it's maybe possible they pierced him with short studs, though. Like if it's tight, that could be the problem.
If you're at 2 weeks, you should be fine. And basically that pocket's starting to form. That's why you're seeing that bump on there. Okay. I'm 99% sure that's what it is. And that bump will go away with a little bit of time. We see it on Medusa piercings, lip piercings on the lower. I've never really, maybe, I have seen them on Monroe piercing. Yeah, they happen on all oral piercings on the inside.
Something about the inside of your mouth, the way it heals. All right.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the angle of the piercing.
It could. I guess if it was less than
right
perpendicular
angle or something, but I don't know. They tend to go away. I don't see them hanging around that long, so nothing to worry about.
All right. Bonnie Bailey says hi from Georgia.
Hi, all the way from Georgia.
Hannah says hi. My helix and conch are both just over 2 months old. They've never swollen, but they're still somewhat sore. Is now a good time to downsize, both gauge size and length.
Okay. This is another thing that has come up a couple times the last week or two of people downsizing their gauge. There's no real reason to downsize to a thinner gauge. A lot of people think the thinner is going to be cuter, but there's a certain size piece of jewelry we put in people for a reason. Now, if you're doing helix piercing and we pierce you at a 16, you want something thinner in there, it's more likely to cause bumps and irritations by putting thinner jewelry in there. The downsizing means shortening the post. So if you shorten the post so there's less movement, and if you haven't had any swelling and it seems like it, yeah, you're probably okay to downsize. But I would suggest keeping the same thickness just because it's more comfortable in the long run. And if it doesn't work out and you're having problems, stretching a conch or a helix up sucks. I'm not going to lie.
All right, Hannah. So there's some new info there. Yes. Jack says, I'm planning on getting a snake bite piercing. How long do they take to heal on average? And when will I be able to change the jewelry out?
Snake bite piercing, couple lip piercings here. They generally heal in about a month and a half, maybe 2 or 3 months. Kind of depends on lifestyle, but they're going to be swollen for 3 to 5 days. And then typically they're going to feel pretty healed in a month to month and a half. That's when crusties kind of start slowing down and stopping. But it also kind of depends on anatomy. If you have really thick lips, it's going to more tissue to heal. It's going to take longer to heal up. It's generally not that painful. The worst part is dealing with the long initial studs, because once the swelling goes down, you could bite down, chip your teeth, do damage that way. So you need to eat slow and take your time. But in general, biting your lip hurts more than the piercing does. So it's totally worth getting done.
Just want to say thank you to Wyatt Holt, who sent us a pound.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely appreciate that. That's awesome.
Very nice.
Our next question will come from Jay Bird. It says, hiya, can nostril piercings still get angry almost 2 years after having one?
Any piercing can still get angry after a long period of time. Sleeping on a piercing the wrong way, your ear piercings will get really, really mangled. Wearing a new set of earbuds in your ear, and all of a sudden your doth piercing is going to flare up like, but I've had it for 10 years. Well, if it's held the wrong direction for a long time, it's going to get irritated. So yes, it can happen. And nostril piercings are notorious for catching on towels, shirts, pillowcases. So yes, it totally can get irritated. Just be nice to your piercing. Don't worry. If you take it out when it's irritated, it's going to close. So keep jewelry in and just be patient and go back to cleaning your piercing for a while.
Got a nice success story from Bonnie Bailey. Got my Medusa done twice, and they did it at an angle. Found a great piercer after seeing your vid, and he did it nice and perpendicular, and it's healing great.
That is awesome. Yeah, don't just trust any piercer. Do your homework, people, because as you can see here, this is important. Finding the right piercer will give you a much, much better experience.
You think you're saving $10, but you're really not with the amount of trouble.
That was like second or third time in. Yeah. So it's, people try to save money going to the cheaper places or just wherever, and you end up spending more because you have to do the piercing again or get different jewelry, upgrade. It gets more expensive. So in the long run, The slightly more expensive person is cheaper.
Just doing it right the first time.
Yeah.
Carolyn Murphy says, hey, Scott, would I be able to have upper helix ear piercings when I wear glasses? My upper ears do stick out a little bit. Thanks.
Yeah. The thing is it kind of depends on where you want the piercings. If your ears are touching where your glasses sit, no, you can't have them there. But if there's a little tiny bit of a gap, you can totally kind of fill it. You're going to have to be careful during the healing process, and then you need to downsize to that shorter post. But once you have a flat disc pulled up nice and flat against there and you're healed up, it's not a big deal. It just might get a little irritated, maybe a little longer healing process. But one thing I've seen also recently is there's these little plastic things you put on the back of glasses that kind of hold them steady. So if you have glasses that move around or they're bumping and hitting it, that can kind of hold them in place too. You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen that.
They're little things you put over the ends and like, they hold my ears steady. So that way, like also nostril piercings, like my glasses used to fall down. Now I put these things in my glasses so they can't fall down.
Okay. Keep it from interfering.
There's little tiny things like that really make a difference too.
Will Jones with a little partial success story here. His school had a student council speech today to vote on the members. And apparently their school has a policy of only 1 ear piercing per ear. And 3 of the people, Will being one of them, talked about how that seems like a bad policy and that you should be able to have more than 1 piercing per ear.
That seems like a reasonable policy to be able to change. Yeah, it is not up to the school. I mean, it doesn't affect your learning. It doesn't.
Shouldn't.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
There's a lot of old rules that still stick around. And be the one. Hold the flag for us.
There you go. So awesome. Nice to hear that, Will.
Good job, Will.
Bonnie Bailey asks, would I be able to get a labret piercing? And I already have a Medusa. So can you match a labret with a Medusa?
Yes, absolutely. That's called cyber bites. Super, super fun. One of my favorite bites piercings, just that upper labret and a Medusa, or lower labret and a Medusa. That's the right wording. Really cool look. Yeah, absolutely.
Ryan Lake Benson has actually a really good question that a lot of people ask. I love your videos. Can I ask, why is it you can get pierced with your ears straight to a larger size? But if you're stretching them yourself from existing piercings, you have to wait 1 to 2 months each time. What's the difference?
I love this question, and people need to know this. So thank you for asking. When you're stretching your ears from existing piercing, you have healed a tube of scar tissue called the fistula. And the thing is it's kind of like when you put on a pair of tight pants. After a little while, they kind of start loosening up because things kind of stretch out. Your ears do the same thing. So you put in a tight piece of jewelry and it slowly stretches to where it's loose enough to where you can just kind of put the new pair in your ears. So that's why you want to wait some time so the skin to relax. Now, when you're doing a large gauge piercing, that tube of scar tissue is not there. So we're making the crescent incision just slightly bigger, and then you're healing it at that large size. And then you need to start doing the slow stretching as well. So when you're doing an open wound, that tube of scar tissue is not what you're stretching. You're just creating the hole.
Okay, so
I said that right. Yeah.
So if you're starting from scratch, you're just making a huge hole in the first place. Yeah. There's no scar tissue to mess up.
Yeah, there's no scar tissue. And if you're stretching an existing piercing and you rip scar tissue, that's where blowouts happen, where you get the huge weird scarring, the weird shaping of your ears.
Yeah,
but
uneven.
The hole's not established. I'm just establishing a bigger hole to start.
So that is the difference, Ryan.
Is tube of scar tissue cannot be ripped.
All right. Yes. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Demesis Aguilar says, hi guys, hope you've been having a great week so far, and thanks for all the great information.
Absolutely. A wonderful week. Hope you're having a wonderful week as well. And I love spreading the knowledge.
Also, Sebda says, hey, I hope you're both doing well as always. We hope you are also doing well, Sebda.
Absolutely.
Sarah Brunt says, hi Scott, I got my conch pierced 3 months ago and I've developed a piercing bump on the back side of it. The front of it is constantly got dry blood on it and looks red, almost raw. Does that mean it's rejecting? Okay, so question number 1 is, do you have a ring or do you have a stud? Because if you have a ring in there, the crusties can get pulled through and it's going to scratch and irritate, causing it to bleed, causing that irritation bump on the back of your ear, and that could be a reason why. If you got pierced with a stud, something's bumping it or irritating it, or you have too short of a post in there. If it seems like the post has no room to move, you might need a longer post in there. The other thing I'm going to ask is if you still wear a mask. If you wear a face mask where the bands go behind your ear, those bands cause massive, massive problems. So get a mask extender where it goes across the back of your neck instead of behind your ears.
How long do they say? A couple months?
Yeah, just red and raw. Conchas don't really reject in the sense.
No,
though,
they can't reject. They might migrate and kind of move a little bit, but that's not going to cause any bleeding. The sleeping on it or a mask or too tight a jewelry, but it's only recently, so it's probably not too tight a jewelry.
3 months ago.
Yeah. Figure out what's changed in your lifestyle that would cause this. Or if you just had a really big crusty get pulled in, that's enough to scratch and cause it to bleed for a couple days.
So it's not necessarily rejecting, but you do have to figure out what's wrong and kind of figure out what's irritating.
Go back to the cleaning if you've stopped already. Maybe you've changed your jewelry to something different. That could be the reason why.
All right.
A lot of factors.
So some different stuff to kick around there, Sarah. Hopefully you can solve that. Plugsy says, thank you so much for the advice, Scott. It's really appreciated.
Absolutely.
Zambeers says, how can I tell when a piercing is done healing? I just got a flat in late August when it looked like it, and it looks like it's already healed. But when I touch it, there's just the slightest little bit of pain.
Okay. So in general, with cartilage piercings, there's not a lot of blood flow to the area, so they take longer to heal up than something like a navel, a lip piercing, or a tongue piercing, which has the white blood cells it needs. Cartilage generally takes a minimum of 3 to 4 months to heal. That's about the earliest I personally think it could be healed for you. So 3 to 4 months before it's healed, sometimes up to a full year. It kind of depends on lifestyle and whatnot. But if you don't have crusties on there, and in general, it's not very sore, you're probably healed up if it's past that window. So I hope that helps. A little bit of tenderness happens on any piercing, even if you have it for years. If you just sleep on that side all the time, it might just stay a little bit sore.
Just get a little sore.
You know, if you have a bruise on your arm because you keep hitting it like this, but you keep hitting it like this, causing the bruise, it never really goes away and it stays a little bit tender. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Aida had a VCH piercing in March and got an irritation bump in April. And we've tried a larger bar. We've been cleaning it regularly, and it just hasn't gone away. It was done at a 12 gauge with titanium. Should we just retire the piercing, or should we continue to try to wait this out?
I don't know who the piercer is. The only thing I would say is hopefully it was done properly, because a VCH is a vertical clitoral hood, and it's the flap of skin that kind of goes over the actual clitoris. Now, some people will put a receiving tube on the underside. Some people kind of freehand this. But if you don't go perpendicular to the tissue and you go the long way through the tissue, it's going to be a lot longer to heal, and that could cause that piercing bump, which could be out of your control. So if it seems like they only pierced a little bit and it's pierced properly, you should be okay. But if it seems like it's coming out of the skin and it's pierced, does that make
diagonally
sense?
Do you want to draw a little picture? I think I do understand what you're saying about, like, if it goes through perpendicularly or if it goes through diagonally.
Let me put on something. Why isn't this working here, Jared?
Uh-oh.
Go to background, dry pen, go to dark. I'm not good at this kind of stuff, but I try.
We're getting there. We set it all up in advance so that it should be easy. Oh, well, we'll explain it with words.
Yeah.
Or even grab one of those ears and just kind of show.
Okay, yeah. Good example. So when you're looking at the ear this way, you want to go as perpendicular sideways through the skin as possible. Sometimes people will pierce at a long angle like this. That means you're healing from here to up here instead of just this short amount of tissue.
And those pointy slivers.
A long way like this, it kind of creates weird angles, because if you go in perpendicular, you have a real strong base here. Okay. If you go at an angle like this, you have really weak spots and really strong spots. So 90 degrees is the answer. And those really weak spots can cause those irritation bumps. So that's what I would say is check your anatomy, make sure they pierced it through that way, not the long way through the skin.
And a curved bar is correct, right? Because
generally a curved barbell. I've seen different, like little J bars. There's VCH bars now. So there's a lot of different styles of jewelry, but you don't want a straight one in there.
All right.
But if they did a 12 gauge, I'm sure it's a curve.
Yeah. Aida points out that it is a curve and it's an APP piercer.
Yeah. It's probably right. Sometimes you just get irritation bumps. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe check your undergarments, make sure nothing's rubbing up, grabbing a hold, causing irritation there too.
Kate Taylor watched that video where you did the piercing and stretched it right away and has to admit that that's a tempting option.
Was that the earlobe one?
Yeah, when we did Jose's lobes.
Yeah, after I put that video out, I did quite a few large gauge earlobe piercings. And for the most part, people don't have too many problems with them. They just heal up really nice.
I mean, if you don't have a pierced ear in the first place, it's an interesting little jump start you get to take. Leon Bachar the human says, "Hey Scott, I took my nostril out like a month and a half ago and I still have a red scar. Will it go away? And what can I do to help it go away?"
Good question. Over time, it will definitely go away. Right now, it's still got that little scar tissue in there. Scar tissue removers. If you go to a pharmacy, there's a whole section of different scar tissue removers. A lot of these work really well. My personal favorite is Mederma. I think Mederma Extreme Scar Gel, if you're looking like on Amazon or something. But yeah, you just kind of rub it in there. It'll take the discoloration out of there, soften the tissue back up, and bring it back to as close to normal as you're going to get it. So Mederma is the one I like.
All right. Ashley Parker got a nasolang piercing and is wondering if it would be possible if there's going to be room to still get some regular nostril piercings.
It depends on where they placed the nasolang. Sometimes it's higher up and you still have plenty of room. I'm sure there's room. I mean, look at my nose. My nose has got like the high nostrils. I have the stretched nostrils at 7/16. I'm planning on getting a couple mantis piercings. Tempted on another bridge piercing. So yeah,
so go for it.
There's a will, there's a way.
There's room.
Yes.
All right. Jose says, "Hey Scott, I just got my rook pierced 1 week ago and I've been loving it, but my ear is still sore and tender. Is that normal?"
Yep. You just put a hole in your body. Your body's in the healing process. It will be sore for a while. I suggest trying not to sleep on it. And hopefully you're just doing that wound wash spray to clean your piercing. Less is more. Let your body heal it up. Just keep those crusties off.
Kate Taylor feeling the same feeling we all feel. When is the absolute soonest I can change my septum ring? It's been 2 weeks. Feels great. No discharge. Could I change it?
I wouldn't if I were you. Again, I would say maybe, I hate saying it, but maybe a month would be the absolute earliest I would ever consider changing anything. But it does technically 6 to 8 weeks to heal all that up properly.
All right.
So
the
longer you wait, the better off you're going to be.
And the consequences are what? Like, why would we not want to just
if you're changing it to maybe a seam ring or a clicker or something like that? A little seam or ring, a gap gets in the middle, the skin closes up, you just lost your piercing. That's why you want to be fully healed before you put in proper stuff. Also, that scar tissue or that tube of scar tissue in there is thin enough where if you change it, it's easy to rip and tear that healing tissue, and that will cause a bump to grow. And then you have months of dealing with bumps.
So if things are going really well now, Kate, that means you don't have a bump, but patience, you could mess around and give yourself a bump. I know we
hate it so much, but wait it out a little bit longer. It's probably for the better.
Try to wait a couple more weeks, Kate.
You could change it now and be okay, but you might have problems too.
Right. And then that bump is going to last how many weeks? You know what I mean? You'll wish you had just waited 2 if you end up with a bump that lasts 6
months afterwards and still dealing with, it's worth the wait.
Right. DeSales says, "Hey Scott, I love your channel so much. The question is, do you have favorite clients? I bet it's fun to see how setups develop over time."
I do. And honestly, it's not about favorite clients because of what they get pierced. It's favorite clients just because they're fun people. You start learning the stories, like I'm getting this, my work finally said this, or I'm getting this because I got divorced, or I'm doing this, or this represents like a lost pet, or so everyone has these different stories and they're like building. And when people come back, it's good to see people. They become friends. They're not just clients, it's people you like. So yes, you do get those people, but the people you only see once in a while, it's hard to remember those stories. But the people that come back several times a year, we know who you are.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Charlotte says, "My nostril was pierced with silver jewelry and I noticed it started tarnishing. I want to change it back to titanium, but I was only pierced 5 weeks ago. Will this set back healing? Because you just told the last person."
Yes. You need to, if you put in real silver in body piercings can cause problems because of the tarnishing. The problems it's going to be causing is it's going to seep into your skin and tattoo your skin, and you're going to have a permanent like black ring around that area. That would have to be tattoo removal to get rid of that black ring. So if you have that silver in there, get it out so you don't have that permanent damage. It's better to deal with a bump in a couple months rather than
A permanent
black dot on your face. So silver's beautiful jewelry, but if it tarnishes that quick, it's tattooing your skin.
So in this case, you would say that Charlotte should just get that out and gently try to put a piece of titanium jewelry in.
There's general rules for most everything, and there's always exceptions, and this would be one of those exceptions. It's causing a bigger problem. So
So even if there is a slight setback in your healing, it's worth it to not tattoo yourself. And I guess the basic rule you'd say is to be very gentle, right? When removing the old jewelry and placing the new in, to try not to disrupt the
or if you can, go to a piercer, because we have tools that can make this less gentle and easier on you.
Oh yeah, with tapers and threaded everything.
Because like if you can't find the piercing hole, like we can see the angles a lot better than you can, and then we have the tools to help guide things through if you can't find them. You don't have those tools generally.
So that's a possibility also, Charlotte, that would be much easier on the piercing itself, is to have someone assist you.
Correct.
All right. Carson Fredderson says, how is it to get a PA? That's a lot of words. Awkward. I bet.
It's awkward. I try to make it as comfortable and calming as possible. But yeah, you have a receiving tube going down the urethra. Not gonna lie, it's not comfortable.
Right.
That's
got to be almost as bad as the piercing.
Kind of create almost like a drum head with the skin, and you pierce into the tube. I pierce it in 8 gauge. I pierce at a 10 and stretch immediately to the 8 to minimize some of the bleeding. So it's a pinch and another little pinch right afterwards. It's surprisingly not that bad, but it's awkward having the tube in there, and it's like I'm not sure what's and it's over with before you know it.
So discomfort, but not incredibly painful.
Yeah,
fun.
The anticipation's worse than the.
I bet. Kayla M says, I've had a nostril piercing for 4 months. I have a titanium labret post, and I've had a piercing bump on the inside of my nose since the first week of getting it pierced. Can I change it to a ring, or should I wait longer?
I would see if that bump is getting bigger or smaller first, because when you put a ring in there, if the bump is kind of like established, just like a little hard bump on one side and it's not doing anything, it's probably not going to cause that big of an issue. But if it's a bump that's fluctuating back and forth and you put a ring in there, that's irritation, and that will cause that bump to get exponentially bigger. So I would try to take a picture of it, maybe a week from now, take another picture, see if it's the same size, see if it's changed at all. And if it stays consistent, that size, then I would say put the ring in. Bumps suck to get rid of, so try to prevent that bump from actually happening. But yeah, just see if the bump is changing at all. That's the way I would.
So if it's it's a hard bump, it's not going anywhere, it's fine. But
sometimes once you have a bump there, it's generally not going away if it's fully established. So that's why you want to kind of attack it right away and try to figure out what's going on, get rid of the source of the problem.
Okay.
But once you've had it there a long time, sometimes they don't fully dissipate. The only way you can get rid of that bump is to take the piercing out, use some sort of massage oil, or not massage oil, but Mederma, a scar tissue remover, and that will kind of break down the scar tissue, get it re-pierced, and then you
go from there. So that's why you want to deal with bumps early, is because they can become more permanent.
You've had it for like years. It's not probably going to go away that easily.
Well, speaking of permanence, Kenyon wants to know if eyebrow piercings or anti-eyebrow piercings are permanent. What does it mean for a piercing to be permanent?
Something you can have forever. Now, permanent piercing, like you can always take jewelry out. There's no, unless you're super gluing stuff in, but eyebrow piercings, I have seen people have them for many years. They are notorious for growing out. I've never seen someone have a permanent anti-eyebrow piercing. I knew a girl one time that had a curved barbell, and she was bragging about how she had it for like 10 or 12 years or something. And it looked like it was healed with a curved barbell. And one day it got red and it started rejecting out. So I don't know if I could say there's ever such thing as a permanent piercing. As far as, because the same thing could happen with an eyebrow. I mean, you can probably have it forever, but
unlikely. So an eyebrow is more permanent than an anti-eyebrow, but you could almost expect any piercing could have problems and need to be removed.
Yeah. Now, permanent piercings, I would say, would be a conch piercing. There's no way it can reject or it can grow. As long as you keep jewelry in there, it's going to be in there. Septum piercing, nostril piercing. But eyebrows, any sort of semi-surface piercings can reject.
All right. Fluffy Sock says, hi, I got my first facial piercing about a month ago, and it was a septum. Your videos on septums made me feel a lot more calm and less worried about it. So thank you, Scott.
You're very welcome. And I'm really glad that my videos help you, because it's really scary walking into something you really don't know anything about. And that was my whole purpose, is just keep that education out there and know what you're getting. So thanks for watching.
In fact, very similar story from Will. Had a funny story, got a conch piercing recently and watched your videos, made them so relaxed that when they got done with the piercing, they didn't even have any adrenaline pumping.
Wow, impressive. Thank you for trusting me. I am trying to give you the best information we can here. You guys are awesome.
The Bubbles Queen says, hi, I got my nose pierced over a year and a half ago, and I've had this bump on my piercing and it won't go away. It gets small and then it gets super huge. I'm not sure what to do. So what can we do?
If you have a ring in there, switch to a stud. Maybe check on the style of jewelry you're wearing. You could be having an allergy. It might be a metal allergy where, you know, the body keeps reacting in different ways. The jewelry could be too small, because I know when we lay down at night, there's more blood flow to our head. So sometimes piercings can swell up. So if it fits perfect during the day, it might be too tight at night. And that could be the cause of a cycle of issues. What you're cleaning it with, hopefully, I mean, you've had it this long, you don't really need to be cleaning it with much. If it gets irritated, you can use some emu oil on there. Piercings sometimes are just problems.
So it's a bummer.
So I hope that helps. But yeah, just wound wash spray to clean it, emu oil if it needs to calm down, but make sure the jewelry's not too tight.
All right. Carson Fedderson wants to know, how do you shave without cutting your labret or your snake bites?
It's not easy. And that's one of the downfalls to having a lot of like facial hair around a piercing. Personally, what I did is it never got really close. Like when I had my labret, I always had some sort of facial hair, or I would take like a little tiny scissors and I would just trim around. So there'd always be a little tiny bit of stubble on the underside of the bead. And I would just use a slightly larger bead or some sort of a disc on the front to kind of cover some of that facial hair.
Wow.
But yeah, trying to get in there with a razor without messing up because the piercing, that scar tissue can come out and you can nick it too. So it's not an easy thing. Maybe electric clippers, the ones that you trust, you can get up pretty close. But in general, don't expect a perfect shave around that area.
That's what I have my labret, and when I wear it, you can't shave. Like you can get right up to the edge, but it's like trying to mow around a telephone pole.
Have you ever nicked it then too?
I've never cut myself, but I would just take the jewelry out and shave the area, because I can't stand the feeling with my lips and feeling that tiny little bit of growth. Such an
obvious answer. If it's fully healed up, yeah, take your jewelry out. You might be able to, shave around it and then kind of. But yeah, it's.
But you don't advocate pulling jewelry in and out constantly, so that's not a super great solution.
No, but whatever works for you, and if it's what you need to do. If you're going out on a nice night and you're getting all dressed up and you want to have a good, take it out. But I wouldn't. Yeah, every day is going to be kind of a pain in the butt. Yeah, maybe start growing a soul patch.
So there you go, Carson. Grow a soul patch. It's the only answer. And with snake bites, you'll have to invent some new kind of soul patch.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
Nasson says, hey guys, your videos teach me lots about piercings and I'm planning to get more in the future. Your stuff is very educational for us starters. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you having be a part of the community.
Yeah, we really like hearing stuff like that. It makes it, it's nice to hear.
It was a scary thing to start this channel, like not knowing how people would take this in and if it would really be. But I was like, I just want to try and just get this out there, and yeah, it's working.
All right. Ellie says, thank you. We're glad we could help, Ellie. Leon Bashar, the human, says, hey, Scott, I took my nostril. Oh, no, we answered that one already. Aaron says, when I changed my septum for the first time, it was easier than I expected.
Yeah, that's wonderful. A lot of times, if it's easier, you're just going to that spot, and it's always should be fairly easy. For the people who have trouble, most septum piercings are closer to the tip of the nose rather than in the middle. That's the biggest issue I see people having. It's like they're trying to put it in too far back, bring it forward, and a lot of times it goes in. Once you learn it, it's awesome. But I'm glad it was easy for you. That's awesome.
Any tips for transferring from a taper to a tunnel? That'd be a big taper.
No, sometimes they have them in the zero gauge. If it's a super, super big taper, I don't use tapers above 00. anything past that, I find ends up ripping, tearing ears. It's tougher to do the transfer. I suggest going from like the tape method after a 00. As far as the transfer goes, if it's that tight, you might not be ready to go up to that piercing. Maybe start taping a couple more wraps, let that relax for a couple days, and it should go in a little bit easier for you.
Kona-chan says, hello, my question is if you should only use titanium and gold jewelry for nipple piercings, not even stainless steel. Is stainless steel jewelry okay?
Stainless steel jewelry is okay if it's the higher grade implant grade style of stainless steel. There is a little amount of nickel inside stainless steel, and the higher grades, I believe, like have LVM, which means low carbon vacuum melt, which tries to pull most of the nickel away from that area. The polish on the top should try to help prevent some of the secretion of some of the nickel into the bloodstream area. So that's where it's causing the issues. So if you have a nickel allergy, definitely don't use stainless steel. I prefer using titanium over gold. You could use gold beads, but the weight of the gold for a nipple piercing could cause more issues during the healing process. So maybe a titanium bar with gold beads, and once it's healed up, you can change to the gold. But the weight is an issue on something like that.
Just too heavy.
Mm-hmm. And I will be doing a video on allergies really, really soon. And that's one thing we've learned is like using the wrong metals right away is causing more problems for these metal allergies. So we need to be careful with the piercing community to use high quality jewelry, not the cheap stuff. Because like, oh, it's already healed, it doesn't matter. It apparently does.
That it causes a sensitivity.
It does cause more sensitivities and allergies.
Kayla M wants to know, what diameter or gauge ring do you pierce a doth with?
Generally, I start people at a 16 gauge, and I'll do a minimum of 3/8 of an inch. So if someone has a slightly bigger doth area, I will go larger, maybe all the way up to a 1/2 inch, but that's the biggest I've ever really put in someone's ear. I think I wear 1/2 inch or 9/16 in my ears, but they're fully healed, and mine were done at a 14 gauge. 14 gauge works really, really good too, but most people want to wear clickers, and I find 16 gauge is the most common size. So that's why I just pierce people at 16s.
And thank you again to Wyatt Holt for dropping us that donation. And
Thank you, Wyatt. So generous.
Any donations that come with a question attached to them, we'll go ahead and jump and answer that question first. It gets
Right to the top.
jump the line.
Absolutely.
All right. Cosmic Girl says, I really wanted a cheek piercing, but no one wants to do it here in Ireland. They say it's very risky. Is it though? Should I travel to get it?
Well, as far as the risk goes, there's salivary glands, and those salivary glands can migrate to the piercing hole. I personally don't do them either for that reason, but there are piercers who will do them. Now, the most important thing I would say is I think they say to try to stay in front of the molars, like your teeth in the back there. Once they start getting the bigger molar type, you got to stay in front of that. Once you go past further back, that's when you can get into more trouble areas. So, yeah, they're cool piercings. They leave dimples. I just personally don't do them.
Do you think it's worth it to travel to get it, or to stick,
How bad do you want them?
That's the question at hand,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah. I will say this, expect a year-long healing process. The swelling fluctuates back and forth. You start with huge antennas. They have to be long to start off with, and that's this part.
And they'd stay long for most of that year, I bet, right? So they don't necessarily look cool for the first little bit.
A commitment.
All right. So some things to think about there, Cosmic Girl, to weigh out. Cylinder says, hi, my doth was pierced 5 months ago, and I have irritation bumps on both sides. It was pierced with a horseshoe. Should I change the jewelry, or what should I do?
I would say take a picture of your doth piercing and look at the ring size. The general rule of thumb is you want to have about 2/3 of the ring showing and 1/3 inside, which means more than half of the ring should be showing. If it seems like the bumps are on the inside of the ring and the ring is kind of smaller, it's crimping in on that area, and that means you need a larger ring. So that's what I would say is check the jewelry, make sure it's a big enough diameter to wear comfortably. Maybe check the quality of the jewelry if it has a good polish on there. If it's real dull and flat, it could be getting a lot more crusties, and that could be getting pulled inside. And hopefully you're still cleaning your piercing, keeping those crusties out of the inside. So that's what number one thing I would check is the size of the jewelry. That's normally the issue.
All right. Might need a slightly larger ring.
Oh, and you can't be wearing earbuds, earphones, or stethoscopes. If you're wearing those, that's what causes those bumps too.
Okay. It's going to definitely, no matter how well it's pierced,
Yep.
if you beat it up every day with an earbud.
Correct.
All right. Braden Keenan says, hey guys, love the content. Do you have any recommendations for septum stink? I've been wearing a titanium barbell and I clean it regularly. Are there any better materials like wood pinchers?
Yes, when you're wearing organic stuff like wood, born or horn or bone, they kind of absorb a lot of those oils and whatnot, which will get rid of that stink. Now, if you want to wear the same jewelry, use a natural cooking oil, an olive oil, peanut oil, vegetable oil. Put a little bit on a paper towel when you rub that into the metal, and that will kind of put a mask or covering over the top of that smell and help get rid of it. You can clean with soap and water, and that gets a lot of it away. But to truly get rid of it, that little cooking oil,
a little bit of oil is the magic.
It's the secret. It's awesome.
All right. Thank you to Toasty with the Mosty for a $5 donation.
Thank you.
And we have a question. Do you ever have customers with big cheeks who have to wear tongue bars instead? My cheeks eat up the regular cheek piercings, and that's the situation we're in, is bars that are not quite long enough.
Absolutely. I've seen people get started off with like 1.5 inch bars where they're just quick because the cheeks get so big. So it is real common. Most people wear a 1-inch bar in there for close to the first year. Once you're healed up, then you can downsize. And I start tongues at 3/4 of an inch. So I start with a longer bar than an actual. I don't start, but that's what the standard is. So yeah, it is real common to have that long of a bar. If it's too tight, find a piercer and get the right size bar because they come in many lengths. I guarantee you they make longer bar than you need.
Okay. So you might just have to look around and find one that's the right length for you.
Correct.
It just has to be long enough to not get pinched.
Like I said, most piercers I know that pierce them start people at like a 7/8 or a 1-inch barbell.
Wow.
And you're saying it's like yours is like longer than a tongue. Tongues, I start people with 3/4 of an inch.
So the cheek should actually be a longer barbell than a tongue.
Yeah, you might have too short of a bar in there.
All right. So hopefully that helps. And thank you very much again for the donation. We really appreciate that. Hannah Taiv wants to know, how old should a septum be before stretching? Mine is now 6 months and it was pierced at a 14. So I'd only be stepping up to a 12.
6 months, you should be fine. If your jewelry doesn't have any crusties and it just moves freely back and forth, if you had that 12 gauge jewelry, you could take that 14 out. I bet the 12 will fall right into place. That's how easy they generally stretch. So, and if it doesn't work like that, maybe even do that in the shower. Just be careful not to drop your jewelry down the drain.
Brandon Austin has actually a very good question. Would Scott recommend Mederma when massaging the lobes? And is there any chance the Mederma would mess up the healing of my newer snug and anti-tragus? So what happens if Mederma gets on piercings that you still want?
Mederma kind of minimizes and gets rid of scar tissue, and that's exactly what a fistula is. So if you're using Mederma on your earlobes and you have a snug piercing up top, is that what they're saying, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Chances are it's probably not going to get up there and get in there. But if you were trying to get rid of a bump right like an earlobe piercing next to an earlobe.
What about an anti-tragus? What if I'm rubbing Mederma on a lobe and I've got an anti-tragus?
That could cause an issue if it's kind of, getting pretty darn close. So
try really, it will mess up your existing piercings that you want to keep.
It'll make them less healed. And they go back to like square one. It's really a pain in the butt. So don't get it in a fresh piercing or even an existing piercing.
All right. Thank you for Battle Song Flipper and Christina for being here. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Yes.
Jose wants to know if stretching your septum piercing affects your ability to breathe out of your nostrils.
After a certain point, yes. For me, I don't wear my septum jewelry anymore. I had it up to a 2 gauge and with my septum plugs, or not my septum, but my nostril plugs. And I used to wear silicone, and it was starting to restrict the breathing. I think once you get to a 0 or larger, if you're wearing jewelry in there, breathing out of your nostrils really not an option. So yeah, once you get so big, for sure it will affect it. If you're just going to like maybe a 4 gauge or something like that, no, you should be totally fine.
And Wyatt Holt did ask a question. Sorry, Wyatt, I missed this. I looked through trying to find it, but I did not see it. Hi from the UK. I was thinking about getting a third nostril ring and maybe a coin slot on my ear. Is there anything I can do to prep myself for the pain of the coin slot?
Yes, there's always things you can prep before you get it done. I don't know if the person doing the coin slot is going to be using any sort of lidocaine. Some of those people do, some don't. But as far as prepping, eating a nice big pasta meal or a carb meal the night before gives you energy. It's like carbing out the night before for a big race, so you have the energy to deal with the actual procedure. A full good night's sleep and a large meal before you go in to get your piercing or your modification done. That's what I always do. Just like plan things out, be fully rested. I like getting my mods and piercings done earlier in the day than later in the day, just because I have energy and I haven't gone all day and be like, I'm worn out. I finally get to get this done. And it's like, you just don't do as well. So generally earlier morning, afternoons work better for me. That's the way I would attack it. But yeah, you're going to be fine.
And like everything else, Wyatt, it's not going to be as bad as you expect. You know what I mean? You're going to prep yourself all up. You're going to be all hyped. And then you're going to be like,
biggest battle is up here.
Is that it?
Always up here. Yeah.
Like
what I tell all my clients, the toughest part of my job is convincing people they're going to be okay.
That's what it is.
So hard to do. It's like people are just so ready for the worst. I'm like, we're going to be fine here.
Right. You're gonna smile and leave in 5 minutes. You're gonna be real happy. No big deal. All right. Kayla M says, I went to an APP piercer in New York City, and she mentioned that my lobe piercings will be healed in 4 months max. But if I can, keep the jewelry in for 6 months. This is longer than what I've heard. Could it be the climate?
Everywhere is completely different. Some people like to play it on the safer side, but technically it's 6 to 8 weeks for earlobes to be healed up. That's where they have that fistula strong enough to where you can change it without causing issues and damage. Your body still might be healing up for several months afterwards, so they're probably accurate there. But as far as the initial healing stage where it's healed up enough, after 2 months of it, you don't have crusties and it doesn't hurt, you're totally fine. That's my opinion.
All right. Candace Chernoff says, so there are obviously a lot of different controversial piercings. Like you just talked about earlier, you don't like to do cheek piercings because of some issues. So what's an example of a controversial piercing that you do perform? And why is it that you think it's okay?
Backing me into a corner here. I love this. I would say the most controversial piercing that I do is a smiley.
Okay.
Just because it can do.
And tell us what a smiley is if we don't know.
Smiley is the web behind your lip before your gums. There's that little flap of skin up there. People generally don't like to do these because it can cause gum erosion and teeth damage. Now, when I initially do my piercing, I tell people that I'm going to start them off with a circular barbell. You have the beads there. And after we hit about a month and a half, I want to change to a clicker, a seam ring, something where there's no minimal gap. Nothing is going to close up, but the beads pull away from the teeth and the gums to minimize damage. Now, I also tell people every single time that if you're seeing a pocket where the ring is resting up against your gums, or your gums are getting sore, or you're seeing damage, take it out. There's no reversing this damage. But the damage doesn't just happen overnight. It's not like, oh, my teeth fall out, you know?
Right. So you have a chance.
It's like people who are stubborn, like, oh, it hurts, but I'm keeping it in. I paid $50 or I paid 60 or 70 or whatever it might be. Who cares? They're your teeth. Take them out. So that's why I do that. Also, maybe tongue piercings. There's a lot of piercers who don't like doing them anymore because it can cause damage. But I mean, piercings are a high risk thing to do. They're not necessary. They're not, and you can get infections. People die from a paper cut and the infection getting bad enough and they don't treat it. Mm-hmm. So putting open wounds in the body is argumentatively a dangerous thing to do. It's high risk.
Right. Technically, any piercing is controversial.
But let's look at the other side of that too. It's like I'm creating a stronger immune system where my body can heal these things. It's constantly in practice.
There's arguments on both sides. I like it.
So controversial. I would say smiley's the biggest one. I hope that answers your question.
And you think that if done properly, it doesn't cause the damage, or you can keep an eye out for that damage?
You can keep an eye out for the damage. It still can cause the damage, but take it out when you get to that point.
All right. So Dan Cohen has an American Ampelang, and wants to know what's the best way to stretch it. We're at a 6 now, and we'd ultimately like to get to 10 millimeters.
Ooh. It's just patience and time.
Inches.
And I'll just kind of, first of all, an implant piercing is a horizontal piercing through the head of the penis. Now, there's European style and there's American style. American style means you're going through the urethra, which means you have 2 separate piercings. And whenever you urinate, you're kind of healing both at the same time. So it's a faster, easier theoretical heal. Now, European style goes above the urethra, so it's one long bar, typically a little longer healing process. As far as the stretching goes, just time. Once you can kind of pull on the bar a little bit, and if you see a little bit of a gap of skin on the underside, you can start to stretch. But you got to be careful. You got to go slow because you can do damage to the urethra, causing urinary tract infections. It's not fun.
All right. So go slow.
Yes.
Pretty much the advice for most stretching. Do you want to get shark bites done all at once or 2 sets and 2 sets?
I personally would say 2 sets and 2 sets. So, I mean, we're talking shark bites. That's a total of like 8 piercings, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like 2 lower, 2 upper. Yeah, I would do a max of like 4 piercings in one sitting, let them heal all the way up, and then kind of go from there again.
Work on some more.
Yeah.
All right. Ashton Fairhall wants to know, do floating navel piercings work if your stomach folds at the belly button? So like when you sit down and lean forward, if that fold spot is at your belly button, would that interfere with a floating navel piercing? Would that cause?
I would have to see you exactly and bend over to see if it would get in the way. But typically the angle's in, so it's sticking out more. So the fold.
It's hard to say. It's a very specific question, unfortunately, Ashton. You'd need to have a piercer or someone like look at it in particular.
Yeah.
You'd probably be okay though. Like there's few people who are not candidates for one or the other, right?
For one of the, if there's a will, there's a way. There are people who are not fully pierceable, but you probably can.
All right. Maddie Stevens says, hi, and thank you for all the advice.
Hello.
I have been craving a new piercing and I'm leaning towards a tongue piercing. Any thoughts or recommendations?
Yes. Tongue piercings are easy piercings to get. The week after kind of sucks because you're going to be swollen. You're going to have a lisp and you have to eat slower. So it's kind of frustrating that way. There's always that risk of biting down on that barbell and chipping and damaging your teeth. If you don't check your beads, you can always bite down on those. So it's kind of a higher risk piercing. I will also say it's one of the quickest retired piercings that people get rid of, meaning it's the shortest lifespan. So a lot of people only have it for a couple years and retire it. But then again, I've also known people who've had this piercing for well over 20 years too. So, but in general, it's pretty easy piercing.
Hannah Tave says, I have some sensory issues, which sometimes lead to having bad dental hygiene for extended times. I'm considering a tongue piercing or a lip piercing, or would that be a bad idea?
If there's already teeth problems and things are rubbing up against it, that could cost more. It's kind of in your court right there, but good oral hygiene is really important for oral piercings. And
especially the actual piercing aftercare. So you'd have to make sure that you were willing and able to do that in a daily sense.
If you're asking if you should get a piercing and ignore all piercing aftercare, no, you got to do the aftercare. You got to heal it up. And cleanliness is super, super important for any piercing to heal properly and to maintain.
So that may make it difficult. It may be not necessarily the best first piercing because it would,
correct,
add to the problem. Leslie Messick says, can stretched conches shrink?
Yes. Mine are a bad example because mine were pierced with a 4 and stretched to a 2, and I eventually got them to a 0. But I think I can barely put a 6 gauge in there right now. So they will shrink a little bit, but I mean, don't expect it to. It depends on how big you're talking about stretching too. If you're talking about trying to go to a 1/2 inch or a giant plug in your conch, it's going to be a big hole in your ear for a long time.
Long time.
Long time.
Mr. Master says, hey, 2 weeks ago, I removed my lobe piercings, which were done over a year ago. Neither had fully healed, and I was tired of trying to save them. So I'm keen to try again. Do you have any suggestions or words of encouragement?
Yes, massage your ears, break up that scar tissue as much as you can before you get them re-pierced, and find a good quality piercer who's going to put some titanium studs in there, enough room for the swelling. And then once the swelling's gone down, after maybe about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, shorter posts, they're nice and snug on there, and you should be able to heal this up. Otherwise, think about, do you wear helmets? What caused the problems before? Were you touching and playing with them? Was it aftercare issues? Do you work in an environment where you're around chemicals and things are spraying and touching them? There's a lot of things to consider, but if you want them, they're totally worth having. I love ear piercings.
All right. Next question is, hey guys, what time is it for you guys? I'm in Ireland and it's between 8 and 9, depending on when you're reading this. Here it is 1:19 p.m.
1:19 p.m. Absolutely. We start right at noon here in Las Vegas. So
yes, Las Vegas. That's the Pacific time zone here in America.
9 o'clock over there, huh?
Wow. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Safira Gita Utami says, hey, Scott, my conscious surprisingly healed faster than my upper lobe. I'm taking care of the upper lobe with extra care now. The human body is really weird.
You hit the nail on the head right there. The human body is bizarre. People heal things up that shouldn't be healed up faster than they can. And sometimes the most simple piercings are the biggest pain. It doesn't make sense. I don't know. Like if I ever get a portrait of my body, it's going to be of Murphy, because Murphy's Law. It's always right there.
CJB says, hey, Scott, love your videos. Question about the UFO piercing. Do you have to get the rook and the forward helix at the same time, or am I able to get one through an existing rook piercing?
I have done it that way before, but the thing is you need to go talk to your piercer. We need to put in like a circular barbell in your rook and kind of fold it over to see if it's going to rest in the right spot. Then you would mark where the piercings need to be and you can pierce it accurately. But generally the angle of that rook is essential to lining up with the forward helix in order to pull this off.
So it's not just any rook. It has to be the right rook.
Correct. And at the right angle, because I don't necessarily always pierce the rook in the same way I would for a UFO as for a rook piercing.
Like the opposite way almost.
Yeah. It's kind of bizarre, but that's how it has to be done.
All right. What is your least favorite area of the ear to pierce?
Area of the ear.
Or not to pierce, even like to pierce, or just what is your preference? What's your least favorite ear area?
Okay. I would say something like a UFO or a snug piercing. As a piercer, it's weird, but I don't like hurting people. And I know when they get those, I'm going to hurt them.
Okay. So just those are that's painful piercings.
You know what? I can do it less painfully than other people. That's how I justify it in my head. But yeah, when I know that it's going to hurt a little bit more, that sucks for me.
So those are the ones where you're nervous for them, is like a UFO or a snug?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that should say something to all of us out here thinking about which ones we want.
Yeah. And it's like snugs just take forever to heal. Same thing with UFOs. I did a UFO on one of my good clients, and he just came in the other day and still got bumps on there after like 6 months, and we're still working on them, and they will heal up, and it looks amazing. He wants to finish healing the stuff so he can do a UFO on the other side. Unbelievable. On the other side, he's healed up a conch to conch industrial. So he's no stranger to healing of rough piercings.
How long should you wait after piercing a septum before stretching it?
Minimum of probably 2 months. After 2 months, you should be healed up. If there's still crusties, tenderness, soreness, wait longer. And a lot of times in the septum piercings, that first stretch you can do yourself. If you got pierced at a 16 or a 14 gauge, a lot of times the jewelry feels so loose, the next one just falls into place. Do it like right after or in the shower because that hot water loosens everything up. And it's pretty easy to do.
If you have an earlobe piercing, can you get it re-pierced at a large gauge if the old holes are still open?
I've done it, but it doesn't really work that well. It's real complicated because it's like the placement of the needle. Like when I do, the needle has a curve on the top and you do the piercing, it's displacing tissue down from there. It's not like I'm putting a hole in the middle of the ear where the initial piercing. So if the hole is where you want the piercing to be, and I do a large gauge, that means everything's going to be placed much, much lower.
Okay.
Does that make sense? What I'm
you
saying?
Won't be able to put the hole in the exact place where the original hole was.
I wish I could draw here, but I messed this all up.
Technical difficulties. So, yeah. Please stand by.
Yeah.
Moving on, because we have probably another 10 minutes of questions, and
Sure.
we're going to try to get to as many of these as we can.
Subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and also hit that like, and tell your friends about us. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers.
Well, we're getting close. We're over 90 now. Cool. All right. Alice Doral says, hello. So glad I'm able to catch this today. And we are glad that you're here, Alice.
Welcome in.
A hint of awesome says, hello. How long is normal for a septum piercing to be swollen? I can't tell if mine still is or if it was just pierced crooked. It's been 2.5 weeks. And how long should you wait before getting re-pierced if we do decide that it is crooked?
Okay. Swelling isn't going to affect the crookedness too much. So if it seems like it's crooked, it's probably crooked. If it's still sore and swollen, and if it hurt really bad when you got it done, they might have went through the thicker cartilage, and that could be causing the issue too, is a longer healing process. Now, I would have to personally see it to tell you how soon you could get re-pierced. If it was done just in the wrong spot and I'm not going in the same spot, I would say maybe a week or so after you take it out, you could get it re-pierced. If it's going roughly in the same spot, at this point, I would say you want to wait at least a month minimum before you get it re-pierced.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Maggie says, I got my vertical labret the same week my dog passed away this past summer. That's sad.
Sorry.
But
memorial piercings happen too.
It's true. Yep. Yeah, in honor of
in
someone
honor
or
of
an
it's
animal.
Like, we have these paw prints with gems and different colors, and people get them for their pets all the time here, and it's
kind of an interesting way to wear a memorial.
It is.
Annalise Gray says, hey, is it possible to get your eyebrows microbladed and get a piercing after it heals? These tattoos are temporary, so will it look weird when faded? And can you remove the piercing later to redo the tattoo? So microblading, is that when they tattoo in your eyebrows?
Yeah, it's kind of like a little scraping. They're like little tiny blades that make mini cuts, and they almost rub the tattoo ink in on top of it, leaving like a temporary tattoo where they last like a year, sometimes a little longer, but generally they start fading. They got to be reworked.
How do you feel like that? How does that dance with an eyebrow
piercing?
You
should be fine. You're probably going to upset the area around the piercing if they touch it. But I will say I just got the white dots re-tattooed down my nose, and one of those dots is right on top of the bridge piercing. So I actually took my bridge piercing out. We tattooed over the top of it. And then once we were done with the tattoo session, I went to go put it back in. It was tight. It was swollen and a little upset, and it was tough to get back in, but I did it. But a tattoo machine is attacked differently than microblading, so you might not have to take it actually out to get it microbladed.
Because the microblade seems to be a little less aggressive.
Don't know for sure. Next time I have an esthetician in, I'm going to ask them because I'm really curious about it now.
Very cool.
If they go over the actual piercing, or if they make people take it out.
Sarah M says, hi there, new to the piercing world and love your videos. When should you stop using the wound wash spray after a piercing, or do you keep spraying it once in a while?
The wound wash spray isn't going to hurt you to use for long periods of time, but in my opinion, it's kind of a waste of energy and resources. Once your piercing is healed up and you're not producing any crusties in your past a month or several months past that, it's not going to really get inside the body because that tuberous scar tissue is preventing that from happening. So like for a nostril or earlobes, if you don't have crusties after a month or 2 months, you don't need to do them anymore. If you still have crusties, it's actually doing something and you want to get rid of those crusties. So that's the way I would kind of approach it. Cartilage piercings on the ear, probably 3 months to a year. Earlobes, nostrils, lip piercings, maybe a month to a couple months.
All right. Next question is, Scott, would you get a bridle bar? And I threw it into the old Google here, and they seem to be showing like a cuff on a nasolang, maybe.
Yeah, it's I've never installed one of those or worn one of them. Actually, no, I take that back. Back in the day, there was this company called Good Art, and they had these things called Liberty Spikes, which was basically a bar. And I opened it up a little bit, and I put it across my bridge piercing, and it had all these spikes going across. I'll see if I can dig out a picture. It was really, really cool looking. But yeah, I have worn one, but that was 2000. Yeah, 20 plus years ago. But yeah, the new bridle bars, those things are awesome. I just don't have any in stock or ever installed any.
Frey says, Scott, I want to get my ears pierced, but I don't want it done with a gun. How can I be sure that I get it pierced without a gun?
Don't go to a mall at a little kiosk place in the middle. There's a lot of places. There's some new companies like Rowan and like any place that had like Piercing Pagoda, Claire's, things like that. They're rebranding the name of their piercing gun to Pressure Sensitive. I don't quite know the
still a gun though, basically,
but it's still basically the gun. So
if you go to a real piercing shop though, like if you look up body piercing, your yellow pages
or tattoo shop, you're going to find us. I think they're trying to brand themselves in the same category, but if they're not washing their hands, they don't have a sink in front of you. If it looks like it's a contraption thing, like ask them, are you using a needle?
Yeah.
They can't lie to you.
When you call, if you just ask if you're using a needle
with a needle, that's the way to do it. Ask if they pierce with a needle.
All right. So that's the way to deal with that,
Yep.
Frey. Ash wants to know if you've ever had elderly clients in your shop.
100%. One of my oldest clients I've ever had was 86, I believe, and we pierced a nostril on each side. She eventually wore a ring in one and a stud in the other. And her only concern was what her grandchildren were going to think. And I was like, you're the coolest grandma ever.
That's
no
so
worries.
Funny.
Yep. That was in the mid 90s too. Yeah, that was back in 97, 96.
Trendsetter.
Yeah.
Javon says, Scott, how do I clean the ball from my snake bites if it falls so that I can put it back on?
Just regular soap and water is all you really need. I mean, it's like there's going to be some germs on there, but soap is going to kill most everything. You don't need to kill every single germ on there because if you've already been wearing on your lip, it already has some germs on there. And if you're healed, your body can kind of protect it. So regular soap and water. I mean, think about the silverware where you know, like when we eat food and we're actually washing it, little dishwashing soap, you're not like scrubbing it with peroxide and alcohol and all these other harsh chemicals.
Just get it clean.
Good enough.
All right. Jose wants to really get a vertical lip piercing because they have a pouty bottom lip.
Cool.
But do they tend to have a high rejection rate?
No. The more pouty bottom lip you have, the better chance it is going to stay. The only rejection ones I've ever seen is when people have a really flat lip and there's nothing to grab a hold of. So it should be totally fine. I've even done vertical abrets on people who have such a pouty lip where I use a straight barbell.
Wow.
It's going to be a straight piercing. I can tell.
It's going to work.
Done. Yeah.
Faye for Catherine asks, still working on the conventions?
I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, I've been talking to people and we're a long, long ways away from that, maybe even a couple of years. But yeah, I do want to do it.
All right. Well, we are coming close to the end of time, so we're just going to try to ask a few more questions here. Paul S. says, I have my septum pierced and I'm wondering, when do you start stretching? Will it at some point start to affect the cartilage? My piercing is not currently going through the cartilage. So yeah, when you stretch, does it eventually start pushing on your
100%,
cartilage?
100%.
Okay.
My septum was initially pierced properly in the perfect sweet spot. Once I got it up to a 0 gauge, it got really uncomfortable because 0 was when my septum started touching my cartilage and it started getting raw. So I was only comfortable wearing up to a 2 gauge. So I downsized to the 2. I also know people who have stretched all the way up to like 3/4 of an inch in their septum, which means they're displacing and pushing cartilage around. But at the same time, I have a stretched nostril piercing. You can stretch cartilage. It's just not fun.
Lots of nice words from everyone. I really appreciate it. And it sucks that we don't get to everybody's question. We're going to have to skip a few here, but this one we want to hit. Beware of the psychotic unicorn, says crooked septum. I had it done twice that first day and it's very crooked. I can't wear a horseshoe. I'm sad about it because the piercer can't guarantee that it'll be better if I have it redone. What can I do?
He or she is being too honest. We can never guarantee any piercing is going to be 100% straight. Our bodies are not perfectly symmetrical. There's no way to do it. But if you trust that piercer and like it can work, you know, like take a picture of it, you know, like talk to your piercer. That's what I do. And like, I'll even write down notes and say it came out too high twice on the left side. I'm going to be, you know, make sure you overcompensate for this. Talk to them. Otherwise, there's other piercers who are willing to do it. It has happened. I have had to pierce people 2-3 times before getting totally straight. Nobody's perfect.
And for the last question today, this is kind of an interesting one from that's why we picked it, because it's different. The name is in characters I cannot read, so I don't know the name, but it says, I live in South Korea where piercing is illegal. I found an APA piercer though, and went in with a very infected lobe piercing. He squeezed the star out of it, which hurt very badly, but it seemed to help. I'm wondering if this is a typical thing piercers do to squeeze out the infection.
No, it's not a typical thing. I mean, I've heard some crazy stories. A little bit. You know, like I did have a customer come in the other day that had a piercing and they needed a change, they needed a longer bar. And I ended up squeezing a little tiny bit, but I don't squeeze to the point where it hurts. It's just trying to drain it a little bit using like a piece of gauze with some cleaning solution, wiping on it. But it shouldn't hurt too much. We definitely should not be lancing it. So we shouldn't be stabbing it to drain it. If it doesn't come out naturally, it shouldn't be putting pressure more like that on there. We're not doctors, we're piercers. We're here to help and assist. But if you have medical problems of that caliber, you kind of need to go to the doctor. But at the same time, you said it's illegal there.
So this had to be done.
So it had to be done. What a crazy situation. But yeah, sometimes that does need to be. The infection still could be there. So keep treating it. Keep doing that wound wash spray or that salt water soak, depending on however you do it over there. And keep your hands off of it. And I hope it works out for you.
Cleans up for you there.
Yeah. So that's where we're winding it up today. Thanks everyone for your wonderful questions. Thanks for being here. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the like, tell all your friends about us. We're setting up cameras so we can start recording piercing soon. And you'll see that once we hit 100K. So make sure you subscribed and make sure you keep putting holes in your body. We'll see you all in the next video. Make sure you keep putting holes.